In Europe during the Middle Ages, the Huns are advancing into the west, causing war and destruction everywhere. The Kingdom of Burgundy is fighting to survive, and now the king has to go out with his men to protect the borders. The area is covered in fog, so the army move carefully. They arrive at a village and find it burned down, with every person and animal dead on the ground. Suddenly a horse walks by, revealing a hidden enemy soldier. This man shoots an arrow at the king and rides away before they can capture him. Marshal Hagen runs to the king's side, but it's too late. He's already dead. A funeral is later held in the capital. Hagen is overwhelmed with guilt and thinks about his childhood. As a kid, he survived a terrible attack from a beast with just a few scars, and the king took him under his wing. Later, while Hagen is training, Princess Kriemhild assures him it wasn't his fault and that he's still part of the family. Soon Prince Gunnar ascends the throne and has a meeting to discuss the situation since the kingdom is surrounded by enemies. They're desperate for allies, so Gunnar decides that his sister will marry the king of Lombardy. Hagen brings the news to Kriemhild and she agrees to do her duty without hesitation. But it's easy to see that it pains her to do so. That night during a storm, 11 armed men are seen camping near the gates. When Hagen goes to the wall to take a better look, he sees a shadow that whispers, "I know your scars," before disappearing. In the morning, the group crosses the gate and the soldiers immediately surround them. Kriemhild watches them from afar and notices one of these riders changing his face. Gunnar agrees to meet with the leader and learns he's Siegfried, Prince of Cassanten. Siegfried's and Gunnar's fathers used to be allies in the old wars. To everyone's shock, Siegfried challenges Gunnar to a duel. The guards immediately surround him to protect Gunnar, and Siegfried agrees to stay as a guest instead. In private, Kriemhild tells Hagen about what she saw and wonders if that person is an old one, an evil being that haunts people's dreams. She thinks her brother should have sent the group away. That night Hagen keeps an eye on the guests. A cloaked figure leaves the group and walks around town, so Hagen follows him. He manages to corner him in an alley, but when he touches his shoulder the shape collapses into a bunch of bags. Meanwhile, Siegfried has drunk so much that he goes to the street to throw up. Hagen approaches him and tells him to leave the kingdom. Afterward, Hagen goes to bed and keeps having nightmares. He sees the mysterious guest in the stable surrounded by blood and tells him he isn't afraid, explaining that the old ones took everything from him, including his fear. The being says he knows Hagen's scars and how he got them, triggering a childhood memory about the loss of his parents during a dragon attack. In the morning, Hagen learns that the cloaked being was seen in the stables by the servants and some horses have been found dead. The survivors are freaking out and Kriemhild tries to calm her beloved horse down, but he breaks the rope and runs away. Hagen and Kriemhild jump on other horses and go after him. A chase ensues through the forest until the horse stops at the river to drink. Kriemhild approaches him and tries to pet him, but the horse freaks out again and hurts her hand before escaping. Hagen takes care of her injury while she admits she isn't happy about the upcoming marriage. Sometime later, Siegfried tells Gunnar that he's traveling because the Queen of the Valkyries, Brunhild, called him in a dream. It's said that she has the power to cast spells on men across the world without needing to meet them. The moment is tense, but suddenly Siegfried laughs, claiming the story is a prank. He also complains about the lack of women at the table. In the evening, Siegfried bursts into Kriemhild's room. He tells her she's beautiful, but Kriemhild says he has no respect and calls him a lost soul, forcing him to leave. Meanwhile, Hagen tells Gunnar that he doesn't think the marriage is a good idea and assures him that their army is strong enough. Gunnar trusts him and agrees to cancel the plan. He's also worried about Siegfried's story because he doesn't think it was a lie. The following morning, Gunnar informs Kriemhild that she doesn't have to marry and she hugs him in happiness. The queen tells Hagen that her daughter had been ready to make a sacrifice for the kingdom and wonders if Hagen is capable of doing so too. Later, Hagen is training with his soldiers when Siegfried comes out with his men to train as well. Their brawling looks more like a street fight than trained knights. Siegfried forgets it isn't real and beats up one of his men, so the others have to pull him away as he laughs like a maniac. Then he asks the local soldiers for a new opponent, so Hagen walks ahead. When Siegfried throws a spear at him, Hagen easily catches it. Hagen tells him they're training for war, so Siegfried should take his game somewhere else. The moment is interrupted by the arrival of a horse with a dead body. A closer look reveals he's a man from a settlement near the border and he was found stabbed to death. Moments later, Gunnar is informed that the Saxons and the Danes have turned against them. The capital is secure for now, but the rest of Burgundy will burn. Gunnar is so desperate for allies that he tells Hagen to ally with Siegfried's group even if Hagen disapproves of the idea. When Hagen goes looking for Siegfried, he sees the cloaked figure sneaking around and finds some things on the ground that appear to be part of a ritual. The cloaked being finally reveals himself as Alberic and he insists he knows who gave Hagen those scars. Alberic explains that Siegfried fought the dragon alone and killed it. Then he bathed in his blood, which made him invulnerable. However, a leaf fell on his back and stopped the blood from touching that spot of skin, so it's Siegfried's only weakness. Alberic has been hired to make a sword with the dragon's bones. He yells at Hagen for letting Siegfried stay in the castle, saying that given him what he's been looking for, a family. In the chapel, Gunnar's prayers are interrupted by Siegfried and his men. He puts his sword in Gunnar's hand and says he'll kill for him. When Hagen comes looking for them, he finds Gunnar announcing that Siegfried is now an ally. Later, Hagen goes to say goodbye to Kriemhild before leaving for war. She asks him why he saved her from the marriage considering the kingdom needs allies, but Hagen refuses to answer. Kriemhild tries to mention the feelings between them and Hagen claims he did it to protect the kingdom, yet she says their home will never be safe. The next day the army marches to war. When they stop to camp for the night, Hagen discusses strategy with his men. He points out that the Saxons and the Danes are brave but lack discipline, so they must take advantage of their chaos. Siegfried is bored and leaves the meeting to rest in the forest. Gunther joins him and asks about the Valkyrie story, so Siegfried tells him that the queen calls for the warrior in him. In the middle of the night, Siegfried rides out and attacks the enemy alone. In the morning, everyone is shocked to see him come back with the head of the Saxon king. He explains that the Saxons are coming after him and are chaotic without a leader, so they must take the chance to fight them. The army is excited and follows Siegfried into battle, ignoring Hagen's concerns. Soon a vicious battle ensues in the forest. Hagen kills any enemy that comes too close, but he's more interested in finding his king. Siegfried fights without mercy and without needing armor, which causes quite an impression on everyone. When Hagen notices that one of his young soldiers has lost his helmet and is about to get killed, he jumps ahead and quickly kills the attacker before passing his own helmet to his friend. The fight continues with both armies losing people all over the place. Hagen sees that his best archer has been surrounded and tries to help, but a bunch of enemies surround him as well. He can only watch as the archer is stabbed to death. This distraction allows an opponent to hit Hagen in the face, causing him to lose his left eye. Hagen immediately brings the attacker down only to collapse in the process. The Dane king is coming for him while Alberic watches from his corner. Siegfried suddenly jumps in and kills the king too before he can reach Hagen, who passes out. When they return to the capital, the crowd cheers Siegfried's name, grateful for bringing them a victory. Siegfried throws himself at them, enjoying all the attention. Meanwhile, Kriemhild is taking care of Hagen, who is still unconscious. Feeling frustrated, she goes looking for Siegfried and finds him drinking. She calls him out for disturbing the mourning of the fallen, but Siegfried says death is part of war. He thinks fallen warriors shouldn't be honored with silence, they should be celebrated. When he asks about Hagen, Kriemhild admits he may be dying, so Siegfried says that Alberic can help him. Moments later, Alberic takes care of Hagen's wounds, drawing a mysterious symbol on his body while revealing the truth. It turns out Hagen's childhood story was a lie. Hagen comes from another kingdom, which had been attacked and conquered by Gunnar's father. His parents had been killed and Hagen was stuck in the fire. The dragon that showed up actually saved Hagen by taking him in its claws and flying him away, explaining the scars. The king later used the dragon to cover up what really happened. When Hagen finally wakes up, he visits the graves of the fallen soldiers. Siegfried tells him that he regrets nothing. Later in the throne room, Kriemhild finds Siegfried, who says that empires always collapse and they're not fighting for. That's why he never wanted his father's throne. Kriemhild is actually impressed by his lack of need for power. While changing Hagen's bandage, Kriemhild admits she's grateful to Siegfried for saving Hagen's life. However, Hagen thinks Siegfried is giving people false hope. Kriemhild points out that fake hope may be better than no hope at all. For the next few days, Hagen is heartbroken to watch Kriemhild and Siegfried spend a lot of time together. One morning, they ride to the forest and admire the ruins of the old wars. Kriemhild asks why Alberic follows Siegfried, so he explains that he killed Alberic's master. He also shares the dragon story. Siegfried became a blacksmith's apprentice because his father wanted him to learn discipline. However, the blacksmith sent him to the valley, hoping he'd never return. After weeks of wandering, Siegfried found a sleeping dragon and thought it was the most beautiful moment in his life. Kriemhild can't understand why he killed it then, but Siegfried refuses to answer. On their way back, Kriemhild keeps hearing a voice calling her name. Siegfried tells her to ignore it, but Kriemhild turns around and sees her father's body covered in vines. She runs away in horror, and when Siegfried follows her, she admits she's starting to forget her father's face. He tried to sell her to a stranger, and for a while she hated him for it. She has a breakdown and Siegfried comforts her. They end up bonding and getting naughty. After they fall asleep, Siegfried has a nightmare and almost kills Kriemhild, but he wakes up just in time. Meanwhile, the Huns continue to advance through to the west under the leadership of Etzel, spreading death and destruction everywhere. Gunther is informed that Lombardy has gone down and is desperate for more allies. Remembering Siegfried's story, he concludes they must contact Queen Brunhild of Iceland. A council member brings this news to Hagen, disapproving of the idea. Brunhild is part of the Old Ones, who use dark magic and were driven off the land. The council member explains that Gunnar has heard the queen in his dreams and thinks it's a trick by Alberic, so he's locked him up. Hagen goes to see Alberic and promises to free him if he shares information about the Valkyrie Queen. Alberic explains that Brunhild is invincible and Siegfried was attracted to that. He kept hearing her voice in his dreams, so he decided to visit her. The queen took a liking to him and they spent a year together, but one day Siegfried disappeared without a word and broke her heart. Alberic believes that Siegfried still loves her. When Hagen opens the cell to free him, Alberic is gone. The next day Hagen tells Kriemhild not to trust Siegfried, but she ignores her warning and announces she'll marry Siegfried to protect the kingdom. A worried Hagen brings the news to Gunther and asks him to set a condition. During dinner, Gunther gives the couple his blessing, but on one condition. Siegfried must guide him to Iceland so Gunnar can ask the queen to marry him, that way the Valkyries would become their allies too. Siegfried is furious yet has no choice but to agree. Soon Gunnar and his men leave on a ship. The first few days of sailing are calm, but eventually the cold starts giving them a hard time. One night a storm takes them by surprise and the crew struggles to keep the ship under control while Siegfried laughs. Unfortunately, the ship hits some rocks and several men fall into the water, including Gunnar. Hagen jumps to save his king. In the morning, Hagen reaches the shore and is devastated to find the bodies of his friends. At least Gunnar is fine and they reunite with a hug. After finding Siegfried and a few survivors, the group continues their journey on foot. They travel for days until they reach a foggy area. Remembering the rules from his last visit, Siegfried makes everyone put down their weapons. Soldiers surround them and Siegfried asks General Senua to take him to the queen. The group is tied up and taken to a castle beneath a volcano. As soon as they cross the gate, the locals yell at them and start beating them up. Bags are put over their heads as they lose consciousness. When Hagen wakes up, his bag is removed and he finds himself in a big room with Senua. She explains that to win the queen's hand, Gunnar will have to defeat her in battle. Many people tried in the past and the skulls are on a pile nearby. Afterward, Hagen is allowed to see Gunnar, who has a sword that the queen gave him. He explains she's nothing like the stories say and that he'll have to fight her. Meanwhile, Siegfried is visited by Queen Brunhild, who gives him a sword too. Siegfried swears that he only came as a guide and that he'll marry the princess, but Brunhild points out that he still came. Sometime later, the group reunites outside the castle and Hagen scolds Siegfried for not warning them about the rules. Hagen wants to leave, but Gunnar announces he wants to stay. Even Siegfried protests, saying that not even he can defeat Brunhild. Gunnar refuses to change his mind, so Siegfried calls Alberich for help. They enter a cave and Alberich takes Siegfried's blood by cutting his weak spot. Then he pushes Hagen and Siegfried underwater while Gunnar drinks the blood. He starts squirming in pain, only to gasp in relief when the duo drowns. It turns out Gunnar has temporarily gained Hagen's and Siegfried's strength. Afterward, Gunnar is prepared for battle by the guards. Senua warns him that if his blood touches the snow, the queen will take his head. If her blood touches it, she'll leave with him. Then Gunnar finally fights Brunhild, who proves to be an excellent warrior and quickly knocks off his helmet. He surprises her by blocking or dodging her attacks, putting up a good fight. After several minutes of clashing, blood finally falls on the snow. To everyone's surprise, it comes from a cut on Brunhild's leg. Gunnar immediately lets go of the power so Hagen and Siegfried can wake up in the cave. Brunhild and her army fall to their knees, determined to keep their end of their deal. When it's time to leave, Brunhild says goodbye to her land in tears. Eventually, the group returns to Burgundy and Gunnar is devastated to learn that his army couldn't hold the borders, so the Huns have destroyed most of the kingdom. Soldiers are deserting and men in the villages are hiding to avoid being conscripted. Since they urgently need their allies' armies, a double wedding is held. Siegfried and Kriemhild are happy to get married while Brunhild and Gunnar look kind of cold. Brunhild doesn't let the priest crown her and instead puts on the crown herself. Later, while everyone is getting ready for battle, Brunhild deals with her frustration by attacking Siegfried. She beats him up in front of the entire army before screaming in anger. The night before the big battle, Hagen notices that his soldiers are fearful and hopeless. He gives a speech to fill them with hope, telling them to follow the queen because she'll protect them. In the morning, the army sees Brunhild's volcano erupting in the distance and considers it a good sign. As the battle begins, Brunhild charges ahead and nobody hesitates to follow her. The fight is vicious and death is soon covering the entire field, but Brunhild's leadership still easily pushes her team toward victory. Etzel stares at her overwhelming power and has no choice but to retreat. In the evening, a huge party is thrown to celebrate their victory. While everyone is dancing and drinking, Brunhild and Siegfried dance too closely and end up leaving together, which is seen by Hagen. The next morning, Hagen notices that Brunhild and Siegfried are still flirting in front of everyone. Hagen approaches Siegfried in private and explains he'll tolerate this on the battlefield, but Siegfried must stay loyal to Kriemhild when they return. Siegfried hugs him and promises to treat the princess well. The next few weeks, the kingdom is happy to be at peace again and concentrates on rebuilding. However, Siegfried is bored and asks Kriemhild to run away with him. Kriemhild refuses, saying she belongs there. Later, Kriemhild asks Hagen why he never married and he insists he had more important things to do. They share a sweet moment knowing they'll never be together. In the throne room, Gunnar learns that his people are still losing hope because they lack the manpower to tend the farms. Siegfried steps in to help, but Gunnar hates how the locals like him better and scolds him for interrupting. Later, Gunnar tells Hagen that he's worried about Brunhild because she ignores him but looks lovingly at Siegfried. He asks for the truth of what happened, yet Hagen assures him they only fought and won. One night during dinner, Siegfried is very rude to one of the councilmen and harasses him until he leaves. A furious Gunnar yells at Siegfried and says that he hasn't become real family yet. When Siegfried tries to start a fight, Hagen stops him. Later, Gunnar sees Brunhild riding out of the castle and follows her. The next morning, Gunnar tells Hagen that Brunhild and Siegfried have been meeting in secret. The people continue to adore Siegfried, but he comes and goes without caring about anyone's feelings. Gunter doesn't want Siegfried to destroy the family, so Hagen agrees to do what the kingdom needs. Meanwhile, Siegfried apologizes to Kriemhild, yet he continues getting drunk in taverns and getting in fights. One day, Hagen invites Siegfried to go hunting and together they bring down a white stag. Hagen has many chances to kill Siegfried with a surprise attack, but he doesn't dare to do it. Instead, he gives Siegfried a sword and asks for a fair fight. They are both great warriors and keep on fighting for several minutes. They manage to disarm each other, so they throw punches instead. After some struggle, Hagen holds Siegfried's head underwater, only for Siegfried to stab him in the leg. The battle continues and Siegfried brings Hagen down, so he puts his sword against his neck. When he's about to kill him, Gunnar surprises Siegfried by stabbing him in his weak spot, finally ending his life. Then Hagen tells Gunnar to ride ahead since nobody should know he was there. He notices that Alberic has watched everything, but when he comes closer to the shadow, he just sees a tree. Hagen returns to the city with Siegfried's body, saying that he defeated him in a duel. Kriemhild has a breakdown while revealing that she's pregnant. In private, Brunhild has a breakdown as well. During the funeral, Hagen defends what he did to protect the kingdom but is open to punishment from the princess. However, instead of executing him, Kriemhild curses him to live long enough to serve Siegfried's son, which will make him suffer more than death. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.